Hi, everyone. Welcome. Today at College Financial Prep, we're speaking with our essay specialist, Rob Koletsky. Hi, Rob.
Hi, how are you?
Good. I know things are heating up in the essay world. Um, People are planning for their Common App, they have their colleges, they're getting ready for the essays. Do me a favor. Um, we're diving in for everybody today because I know essays are on people's minds. So tell us, what should parents and students be focusing on right now?
Well, the most important thing right now is to know that for a very solid basis, um, everyone is going to have a college essay to write when they're applying to their schools. And that's also what we call the main essay. And my number one piece of advice for this is you always want to start sooner rather than later, because the reality is that this is a process that naturally gets very stressful. And what I try to do is when I'm working with students, I try to make it as really the least stressful experience as possible. And the best way to do that is to start brainstorming topics early, looking at the writing prompts, and really just kind of figuring out what you want to say about yourself on paper.
Okay, so the writing prompt. So just so everybody knows, you can go to commonapp.com. You can see the essay writing prompts. And yeah, I totally agree with Rob. It's definitely a great idea to start sooner rather than later to start with the brainstorming. I mean, I hate to say it, my daughter just finished ninth grade. She's already looking at the writing prompts and thinking about what she wants to write about. So it's never too early for this. Um, and Okay, so kids formulate ideas. How many ideas do you think they should start to, like, how many different topics do you think that they should explore before they commit to one?
Something that I work on with students is I try to have them make a list. And with that list, I try to have them think about anything that they love to do in their free time.
Oh,
And so it can be anything small to anything really, really large. And what I try to remind students is that, their college essay, this is not meant to be an entire timeline of the student's life from birth up until now. This really is just meant to be a snapshot of something that is really meant to symbolize something about their character. And so I try to have kids think about things that they love to do in their free time. And normally, what I'll try to do with them is we try to weave together a couple of topics that are meant to work really well together. So, if you want, I can give a couple of examples, if that's all right.
yeah, definitely.
So, in the past,
And here, let me just say this. If you can give a couple of examples, because I know that, since you're an AP English teacher, some of your students are applying to Ivies, but certainly not everybody's applying to Ivies.
correct.
So,
Right, and that's important to know too, is because I help students from all different levels of writing. I've helped students that are applying to some of the best schools in the country, uh, and I've helped students who are applying to very, um, very safe schools for them. I try to help students apply to basically anything that they're reaching for, but the reality is that not everyone loves writing or says that they can't write well. And the reality is, I'm trying to here to help them build their confidence. And so wherever they're at with their writing, I try to help them really put their best selves on paper.
I'm just going to jump in before you give your examples. So something that I always talk about, our listeners today, you've probably heard me mention this a million times. Rob mentioned about safety colleges, and the safety colleges are the ones that, I focus always on the finances, and the safety colleges are the ones that are more likely to offer merit scholarships. And the essays certainly play a role in helping to get those merit scholarships.
Hmm. Right. And so whether it's a safety school or a school that's within the student's range or a reach school, my job is to just help that student really put their best selves on paper. And we start off with the brainstorming process which is just basically a list. And I'll give you a couple of examples of essay topics that I have worked on with students in the past. All these students have gotten accepted to college. They were all successful. It may not have gotten them accepted to their dream school, but all these students got accepted to school. And so one of them was a student wrote about his love for learning how to play the guitar in 650 words, which is the essay cap for the main essay, which comes out to about roughly 2 pages, double spaced, Times New Roman font 12. He wrote about his love for learning how to play the guitar. Another student wrote about his love for filmmaking. He wound up going to a film school in New York City, and the whole essay revolved around his love for the camera, for cinematography, and for film. Last year, I helped a student. He actually got into UNC Chapel Hill. That's where he goes now. He wrote about his love for car shows. And so what you'll see with a lot of these topics is I try to be really unique. And the reason for that is I don't want students to write your typical bland essay. I try to help them separate themselves from the competitive pool of applicants.
Definitely.
And so each of these topics, the goal is that whomever is reading the essay, I want them to be wowed by it. I want them to have such an experience reading this student's essay that they turn to the person next to them and say, you're not going to believe what this kid wrote about, or you have to read this, or take a look at how this kid opens, or look at how this conclusion is. So that's what I try to do with the students to really help them stand out. Another student wrote about becoming a lifeguard. Another wrote about hiking a mountain. He was an Eagle Scout, and he actually applied his love for numbers with hiking up a mountain and leading his scout troop. I had a student, she applied to a bunch of schools. She actually now is going to medical school. But for undergraduate, she wrote about her love for running, just running around her neighborhood.
Wow.
And so a lot of these things are just kind of everyday experiences. But what I try to do is I try to help the student put their best selves on paper while incorporating everything that they love in a way that's going to make the reader almost experience the same thing alongside of them.
So could you share with us for the parents, what are the schools looking for? And second question, main essays, supplemental essays, like these may be terms that, parents aren't yet familiar with.
So the reality is, and this is a little hard to say, but it's the truth. The reality is there's a lot of bad advice out there. And what happens is, students it becomes a very overwhelming process. It becomes overwhelming for parents, especially if this is their first child going through the process. A lot of people now, they just default to going and typing into Google or looking at YouTube videos, looking to see all the advice that's out there. But the reality is that a lot of that advice is conflicting. And so when it all becomes conflicting, it just becomes more overwhelming. And when you have a student that feels sandwiched between what their parents are saying, what their teachers are saying, what they're reading online, it just becomes a lot. And so to address your point with the main essay is the essay that the Common App has. That's the one essay that goes out to all of the schools that are on the Common App list. And so that'll, just to kind of put it in layman's terms, You don't have to write one essay for every single school that you're applying for. The goal is to write one fantastic essay that you're proud of that goes out to all of your schools. And there are a bunch of prompts that the Common App puts out every year. They haven't really changed in the past few years, but the reality is whatever essay is that I'm helping students with, it's going to fit at least one of the topics. And so that's kind of easy.
Right.
But the reality is, for the past few years, schools have kind of amplified their application process, where it used to just be the college essay was the meat and potatoes, we'll say, of the application alongside everything else that's there: extracurricular activities, GPA, types of classes students have taken, college recommendations. Where now a lot of schools are putting emphasis on what we call supplemental writing pieces. And what those supplemental writing pieces are it's a way for schools to see, well, what else does the student have to say, either about themselves or about their interest in the school. And those range from anywhere between, sometimes they're 50-word responses, sometimes they're 500-word responses. I helped a student last year. She applied to a whole bunch of schools. And when we tallied up all the supplemental pieces, we were looking at something like 25 additional writing pieces that the person had to do. And that
This is
becomes
not typical, right?
right. And this is not typical, but it is becoming a little more part of the norm, because even if 25 is a big number, but even if you have six, that's six extra pieces now you have to think about, you have to draft, you have to revise, and the reality is, your average teenager, they get so tired of the process that by the time they get to the supplements, they kind of save it for the end and think that they can just wing it. When what I try to help students with is to kind of keep them ahead of the game, so that when whatever they're writing, we treat everything seriously, and we treat everything as if it's going to be a polished draft. So when they eventually send their applications out, we're proud of it. I kind of have said this before. I look at it as, when the student gets accepted, I get accepted too. I kind of feel that way, like we're in this together. And the amount of schools that students are applying to, I think the cap is 20, if I remember.
Right. 20 on the Common App, and now it's 20 on FAFSA too.
Right. And so, the reality is, the more schools that students are applying to, the more the schools are going to be asking them to do. And when you combine the fall and a senior schedule and early action or early decision deadlines, and holidays, and maybe a new sports team in the fall, it's almost like the common application, and some students work, that's another thing. And so it becomes a very overwhelming process when you're also trying to submit the best application possible.
So everybody knows, I'm not
Mhm.
only the owner of College Financial Prep, I'm a mom too. And oh my gosh, I've been through the process. Like seriously, if you can have your kids get as much done as possible before that first day of school hits, because then they're busy with everything else. I mean, seriously, because I remember friends of theirs, their kids were taking off from school just to stay home and write essays. They couldn't manage everything time wise.
Correct.
Yeah,
Yep.
no, definitely. The earlier you can all begin the process, the better.
Yeah. And I don't mean to give you any bad flashbacks, Vicky, but yeah, that's just kind of the reality. And so, I try to look at this from a teenager's perspective. And listen, nobody wants to be doing extra work in the summertime, or nobody wants to be doing extra work when they kind of need a break. Like I get that, but I also know the complete opposite end of the spectrum,
Right.
when everything kind of feels so overwhelming that it almost as if you're drowning or you're suffocating, and you just kind of want to throw your hands up and then kind of submit. It's almost at that point you're so tired of the process that you don't even care anymore. I try to prevent that from happening.
So just so everybody watching is, I guess, aware, most for the most part, we're talking now about leading into the student's 12th grade. And there is a lot going on. You should be finalizing your student's college list, certainly preparing essays. As far as financial aid applications, that doesn't open till October 1st, whereas the Common App opens August 1st. But that college list is also going to play into how much money you may be able to save on the cost of college. So
Mhm,
lots of stuff that's happening right now, and it all kind of, all parts of that same three-legged stool: the college list, the essays, and paying for it.
mhm.
Yeah.
It's funny to chime in a little bit. Often when parents will reach out to me asking for help, um, you know, ideally, I love being a part of the process from the beginning. It's hard sometimes when students have gone elsewhere or they have already gotten advice from others. It's really hard when sometimes that doesn't work out.
Right.
And then sometimes parents will reach out to me, and it's almost as if they're coming to the ER and I have to do like emergency surgery to the essay. And that I've been able to do that, and that's okay because I also know that that's life. But I
I've
really,
also had the same experiences on the financial aid side. I totally
I'm sure,
understand.
I'm sure it becomes very stressful, and there's a lot of cleaning up to do. Where if they just kind of worked with us from the beginning, it's just that much easier for all the parties involved.
Definitely.
So I kind of think about that too. And then the other thing is when people reach out, you know, they're usually very, um, they feel very behind, or they, like I said before, they feel really overwhelmed and stressed. And so I try to tell them, to be honest, I actually look at this as fun. It's actually meant to be a fun thing. And I get a lot of weird looks sometimes, or some funny laughs when people say that, but that's the reality. Like, if we make it fun, and if the kid is involved and the kid loves their topic, it just becomes that much easier. And I always find that that's always going to bring out the best writing anyway. But when it's too tight and there's too much oversight and there's too much on the line, that's when kids start to shut down. And nobody ever wants that to happen.
Right. No, but I would think and how do you encourage the kids, to help them show them their best selves in the
Hmm.
essay?
It all comes back to relationship building. It's just the same thing in school. Like when I'm teaching in high school, I know that if the kids like me, I can start to then kind of push them to bring out their best selves. And it all just comes to developing a good rapport, being professional, kind of meeting kids where they're at, asking them how their last game was, seeing what's going on in their lives, showing a lot of interest in what they have going on, because it's not just the college process. They are young people. And I know that that rapport goes a long way. And then for some reason kids just kind of naturally respond to me. I still don't really know why, but it just kind of happens. Someone nerdy as myself, I don't really know how it works, but we always just have it's always a nice experience all the way through.
Fabulous.
Mm.
I want to thank you so much for speaking with us today. It's definitely essay season now. If parents want to start working, to have their students start working with Rob, our essay specialist here at College Financial Prep. Thank you for joining us. Certainly, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. I'm Vicki Vollweiler, and you can find us at www.collegefinancialprep.com. Hope to speak to you soon. Bye.
Bye-bye. Take care.